And now, here are the winning numbers in this week's soccer pools. Following the 7 nightly news, a story about the adventures of a young girl and her travelling companion, a wolf, in the journey of Natty Gann on the magical world of Disney at 6:30. At 8:30, you'll wet yourself laughing with Tom Hanks, Daryl Hannah and John Candy in our Sunday night movie Splash. At 10:50, we take you to the Calder Park Thunderdome in Melbourne for the NASCAR Oscar Christmas Classic.
7 gives me good vibrations.
Tonight, the Maddington retail complex blazed a disaster for a number of store owners. A Sydney sex change athlete runs into trouble, and honours go to the bowlers on the third day of the first test.
7 nightly news with Yvette Mooney and David Christensen.
Good evening. Also tonight, Bob Hawke vows to destroy John Hewson's tax package and a timely warning on summer spinal injuries.
And a little later tonight in sport, Dennis Committee's test report, a tight finish at the Australian Open, and NASCAR action from Calder.
But first, firemen are still mopping up after a huge blaze in Maddington late yesterday, which destroyed a retail complex, sending the future for a number of store owners up in flames. And as John McCourt reports, a critical water shortage cost firemen valuable time in bringing the fire under control.
There was a bang. We went outside, we noticed black smoke coming from the middle of the building, and in the matter of 2-3 minutes the whole place was engulfed.
It was the toxic fumes. We just couldn't breathe and we just had to move out. We had 5 minutes to get out and that was it. There was one gentleman left his car parked right there because he just couldn't breathe, he couldn't see anything and he just had to leave the car there.
The eyewitness reports of a $2 million fire which gutted the eastern suburbs complex. It took 40 firemen and 38 kilometres of hose to battle a blaze clearly out of control, forcing police to block a 5-kilometre section of Albany Highway. When the first unit arrived, they were faced with an initial problem. There wasn't enough water. 4 other units were called, and by the time they arrived, the factory complex was well ablaze. Believed to have started in a furniture store, the fire spread to a tyre shop, 2 carpet stores and a large paint shop, and offices of the Department of Corrective Services, which contained highly sensitive files. It took more than an hour to bring the blaze under control. Minutes later, the arson squad moving in to investigate. At this stage, any idea how it started?
Well, it's been treated as suspicious and fire investigation officer and the police arson squad are investigating.
But the blaze could have been a lot worse. Had the wind blown in the opposite direction, a petrol station and scores of homes would have been engulfed. John McCourt, 7 Nightly News.
The Prime Minister has vowed to destroy the opposition's tax package before the next election, and he's made it clear he expects some help from former Treasurer Paul Keating. At the same time, Mr Hawke has held out the prospect that Labor will attempt to match at least some aspects of the opposition package.
John Hewson may have won the first round in the battle to sell his tax reform package, but Bob Hawke believes there's a long way to go, all the way to the next election in 18 months' time.
Before we go to that election, we will have destroyed this package.
And Mr Hawke says Paul Keating is likely to play a major role in that process. The Prime Minister said he expected Mr Keating would launch significant attacks on the coalition package. There were no overtures to his former Treasurer, however, the Prime Minister making it clear that while he believed Mr Keating did have a contribution to make, it would be from his present position on the backbench. Mr Hawke also foreshadowed a detailed attack this week by his deputy, Brian Howe, on the impact of the opposition's policies on national health costs, inferring they could jump by as much as 50%. But John Hewson says unless there is radical change, Australia will be in terminal decline by the end of the century.
That concerns us, and it ought to concern the Prime Minister. and he ought to spend his time getting on and developing an alternative rather than just simply trying to destroy us.
Whatever alternative the government does come up with, it's virtually certain it will include cuts in income tax. But the Prime Minister says any cuts will be targeted towards the people who need them most on low and middle incomes. In Canberra, Laurie Wilson, 7 Nightly News.
A transsexual Sydney athlete is considering legal action against other female runners who are trying to have her banned. The future of Ricky Khan now depends on a ruling by Athletics Australia, which could have international repercussions.
She looks like a woman, she competes against women, but Ricky Khan's birth certificate says she's a man. The 32-year-old middle distance runner for the Randwick Botany Harriers is starting to collect state medals, and that's infuriated her rivals.
We believe that a transsexual male has physical advantages and they are unfair advantages.
114 signatories support that view. They've already put their case once to Athletics Australia, who sought international advice. But inaccurate on-the-spot tests have forced the international body back to square one. Each nation must now make its own decision.
The current ruling from Athletics Australia is that if a person enters an athletic event and nominates as a female, then they can run as a female.
Ricky Khan has been training as a woman since her sex change operation more than 6 years ago. She's living in a happy heterosexual relationship. Legal advice prevents her from commenting on the demands for a new international sex ruling, which could involve medical testing right down to the lowest levels of competition.
Well, we believe that as drug abuse is more controlled, that nations could actually cheat by using transsexual males and presenting them as females.
We've asked our medical commission to investigate and give us their feelings on this, and we will then take a decision perhaps before Christmas.
Anne Johnson, 7 Nightly News.
Today is World AIDS Day, an event commemorated by thousands of people in ceremonies across Australia. In Sydney this afternoon, the day was marked by a play at Darling Harbour.
Help us to sleep, and we can play Monopoly.
So you have a guarantee.
And in Melbourne, about 1,000 people used the day to protest possible cuts to services at the city's major AIDS treatment hospital. Around the world, scientists continue their search for better ways of treating the disease. It's estimated 40 million people will be infected by the end of the decade. A perfect start to summer today, but it also prompted a warning from doctors. December is the worst month for spinal injuries, and West Australians are being urged to take no risks.
Summer has just started, but already there have been 27 West Australians rushed to hospital this year with severe spinal injuries. The inviting blue water off our beaches is where most accidents happen.
Rescue!
Diving into shallow water can be a fatal plunge.
If you don't know the depth of water, jump in and break your ankle. It's much better than breaking your neck.
According to Royal Perth Hospital, it's our young men who live dangerously.
In fact, it's 18 or 19 young men to one girl when it comes to diving injuries.
It's WA's irresistible sun, sea and surf that's being blamed for making our state the worst for spinal injuries. Doctors can only hope it won't be another fatal summer. Monica Koss, 7 Nightly News.
Ahead in 7 Nightly News, roofs go flying as a vicious storm rips through southern Queensland and the death toll rises in history's worst highway pileup. In southeast Queensland, they're cleaning up after a lashing from the first savage summer storm of the season. Last night's fury unroofed houses and toppled trees in what residents described as 30 seconds of terror.
It built up in the southwest, hidden in the blackness, 100 km/h winds. The satellite shows red storm cells sweeping across the southeast late yesterday. Lightning strikes peppering a wide area from Kingaroy to Coolangatta. And this is what the storms left behind. At Acacia Ridge, residents cowered inside as a mini tornado swept through Gregory Street.
The noise and everything was terrible, and then when it went over we looked outside, we could see all this tin and everything flying through there about 300 metres up, and everything else was terrible. Just so scary.
17,000 homes lost power at the storm's height. Elsewhere, trees crumpled in the high winds. With more storms to come this season, the SES is holding a storm damage prevention course, offering tips on how to survive the wild summer weather. Carol Horn, 7 Nightly News.
In what's been called the worst highway pile-up in history, 17 people are now dead and more than 150 injured. The pile-up followed a chain reaction of crashes on a Californian highway.
We're busy this morning clearing away what was left of the cars and trucks involved in the pile-up. 93 automobiles and 11 big rigs at last count. The accident, midway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, shut down a 100-mile section of Interstate 5, the main north-south highway in California. Witnesses said that winds gusting up to 60 miles an hour kicked up huge clouds of dust from the drought-stricken farmlands here.
Pretty soon everybody just started hitting everybody and then just started piling all in.
It was just a nightmare, a nightmare.
Pretty hard to talk about.
Screams of people in burning automobiles.
Other eyewitnesses said there were bodies everywhere. Emergency facilities were strained to the limit to handle the injured. 9 of the dead were found burned beyond recognition in a pile of vehicles that had gone up in flames.
Another crucial test for a disintegrating Soviet Union as yet another republic takes a vote on independence. It was the turn of the Ukrainians today, casting their votes in a referendum which forecasts suggest will result in a positive yes for independence. President Gorbachev has already admitted it would be a catastrophe if the Ukraine, the second richest republic and major food producer of the Soviet Union, became independent. The Tehran Times of Iran has said 1 or 2 American hostages held in Lebanon may be freed within days. But the newspaper added it had no exact details about which of the 3 remaining hostages might be released.
The newspaper, which often reflects the views of Iranian President Hashemi Rafsanjani, says hectic activities are underway to free 1, maybe 2 American hostages. The matter is complicated, it says, but releases are expected within a few days. Diplomats in the area say they expect Joseph Sicipio, kidnapped in 1986, and Alan Steen, taken the following year, to be released soon. Terry Waite, released earlier this month, carried a message from the kidnappers saying the 2 Americans would be freed, followed by Terry Anderson, the longest-held hostage, and that all 3 would be home by the end of the year. Pointing to an early release, UN hostage envoy Gian Domenico Pico, who's brokered all the recent releases, has arrived back in the area. That, says a diplomat, means things are moving.
A boatload of young Australians has cast away from Sydney town looking for adventure on the high seas. They've been chosen from thousands of hopeful crew aged between 18 and 25 to spend a year aboard the young endeavour. In that time, they'll visit 30 ports in 20 countries, following in the wake of Christopher Columbus and representing Australia in celebrations to commemorate the great explorer. Navy personnel will train the 72 novices in the ways of the wind and water. Well, it should be a great trip, certainly more fun than the Indian cricketers are having, Dave.
That's a fair bit too, Yvette. It's been Australia's day again at the Gabba today. Also tonight, Wayne Riley's win at the Australian Open, some NASCAR crunching from Calder, and Luke Longley makes his long-awaited debut in the NBA. Australia is poised to go one up in the Test series against India after day 3 of the first Test at the Gabba today, a day dominated by the bowlers. And with the story of what happened, once again our man in Brisbane is Dennis Cometti. Dennis?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Well, the Australians are right on top after what was a remarkable day. This time yesterday, you might remember, we were talking about a score of 500, but Kapil Dev produced some inspiration with the ball today. He set Australia on course to lose 8 wickets for just 105. They finished at 340, a lead of 101. Kapil finished with the figures of 4 for 90. Boone made 66 and Peter Taylor 31. And then Merv Hughes led Australia back with a vengeance.
Australia intended to bat all day. Indian all-rounder Kapil Dev had other ideas. Porter goes for 28. In the space of 3 balls, Dev turned the match. Jones goes second ball without scoring.
He's on his way.
Boone became another victim of a superb spell, out for 66. Australia stunned at 5 for 265. Mark Waugh struggled with a strained side. Srinath had him backing away for 11.
The gloves.
Healy completed a devastating collapse when he was trapped in front. The match swung wide open.
There's the 5th wicket of the morning.
The Aussie tail tried desperately to wag, but veteran Kapil Dev mesmerised with his swing. Hughes and McDermott completed a 4-wicket haul. Peter Taylor compiled a gutsy 31 to help boost the Aussie lead to 101 before Srinath claimed him. Australia all out for 340.
Yeah, and out. Well taken. Good catch.
Out of the frying pan, the Indian batsman jumped back in the fire. Hughes strikes second ball, India 1 for none.
The same position, it's 1 for none.
Manjrekar was next for 5 in a fiery spell.
It's out, what a catch, the gem, that's a classic. David Boone takes a beauty at short leg. You shouldn't catch those.
Mangzaka went just before tea. India on the skids at 3 for 14. Hughes has figures of 3 for 4. Big Merv combined with Boone again to send Azharuddin packing.
David Boone again and Merv Hughes.
When Tendulkar went cheaply, India were headed for defeat.
He's looked pretty good up till now, but a very good delivery from Craig McDermott.
Kapil Dev couldn't repeat his magic with the bat. Out for 25. India in the horrors at 6 for 87.
So certainly a day and 2 halves as far as the Indians were concerned. Their much maligned bowlers did the job initially. Then their much vaunted batsmen let them down again. Their selectors must be deeply concerned about the form of Srikanth and their skipper Azharuddin. Merv Hughes set the tone for Australia. He took 3 wickets in just 21 balls and has virtually assured Australia a victory. Tomorrow the Indians will be looking to the heavens, hoping for rain. If it stays fine, it looks like Australia is poised to go 1-up in the series. Dave?
Thanks very much, Dennis. Closer to home, the West Indies have opened their tour on a winning note, comfortably beating a West Australian side at Northern today by 68 runs. It was the Windies batsmen who set up the victory with 7 for 241 off 46 overs, WA 4 for 173 in reply.
With festival games all the fashion these days, more than 5,000 people journey to Northern for the first look at the new West Indian lineup.
We'll be looking to have a bit of fun, but at the same time, we want to have a good start to the series, so we'll be taking it pretty seriously.
Richardson won the toss and opted to bat. Openers Philo Wallace and Carlisle Best making a confident start before Chris Mack had Wallace caught at first slip with a score on 43. Richardson joined Best and former Test spinner Bruce Yardley joined the attack and was quickly reunited with the boundary. When Miles Obst removed Best for 43, the Windies were a healthy 2 for 99 off 19 overs, but the best was yet to come. When Richardson departed, stumped for 22, Brian Lara joined Keith Arthurton, both making sparkling half-centuries, highlighted by some huge hitting. Chasing 242 in just 46 overs, WA openers Justin Langer and Robert Kelly wasted no time. Aided by some wayward bowling, the pair posted an impressive half-century opening partnership, but the required run rate proved too great, the Windies opening their tour on a winning note. Neil Poe, 7 Nightly News.
And in Hobart today, Tasmania is frustrating WA's bid for outright victory in the Shield game there. With Terry Alderman out of the game with a back injury, the Tasmanians have an 8-run lead with 6 wickets in hand, and of course there is 1 day to play tomorrow. New South Wales golfer Wayne Riley has won his first Australian Open title after a seesawing battle for the lead on the final day at Royal Melbourne today. Riley, who started the day 1 over the card, pulled off an amazing birdie on the final hole to finish with a 68 and to pocket the winner's cheque for $126,000.
With most players struggling to find par this week, Baker Finch got off to a flying start.
He gets the 3 to start with.
Greg Norman, 8 shots off the pace, opened in similar fashion to yesterday. 2 birdies in the first 5 holes, then again attacked the tricky 7th. But his putt refused to drop. Craig Parry's short game has been solid. This approach on the first, one of the shots of the day. But with a number of Europeans in contention, all eyes were on Royal Melbourne specialist Roger Davis, and he didn't let them down.
However, there are ways.
On 2 under, Swede Mats Lanner bridged the gap when he birdied the 5th after a superb tee shot.
Oh, and what a good shot that is.
It became tight on the leaders' board, with putts finally finding range. First Davis to save the lead, then Jamie Spence joined him on 4 under.
Hold your line, hold your line. What a super putt.
While Wayne Riley had problems with the crowd,
Take your baby away, please. I mean, you know.
Davis jumped out in front at the 11th, but with 7 players chasing him at even with the card, drama struck.
Oh, goodness me.
This opened the door for local amateur Robert Allenby to finish 2 under, but Riley, with 3 birdies in the last 3 holes, took outright leadership.
First in it, always look at pace and line.
And at 3 under, it was enough to take the title.
Happy man. Well, Luke Longley has made his long-awaited debut in America's National Basketball Association, but the giant West Australian hardly set the world alight when he turned out for the Minnesota Timberwolves today.
It was a history-making step. Luke Longley strolled onto the court in Dallas, Texas to become the first Australian to make the NBA. And while the big Aussie looked tentative, coach Jimmy Rogers was happy with Longley's debut, even though the Timberwolves lost by 1 to the Mavericks. To Minneapolis now, and more medals to Australian swimmers in the US Open Championships. West Australian Jackie McKenzie bagged her second gold with victory in the 400 metres individual medley. WA's Ian Brown won the 200 metres freestyle. Simon Upton the 100 metres backstroke, and Susan O'Neill the 100 metres butterfly. Efforts that surprised even coach Don Talbot.
It's a good top competing meet and our kids are racing well. Probably better than I've seen them. That's really good for next year.
And the US are copping a beating in Lyon, France, where the French have taken a 2-1 lead in the Davis Cup final. Henri Leconte and Guy Forget beating American champs Robert Seguso and Ken Flack in 4 sets in the doubles. The French are understandably delighted. They haven't won the Davis Cup since 1932. Chris Young, 7 Nightly News.
Some fairly serious fender bending at Calder Thunderdome in Victoria today. The American Terry Fisher won the NASCAR Christmas Classic, the 125-lap race turning into a panel beater's delight.
And away they go.
The 125-lap NASCAR race brought together 25 of the best high bank drivers from Australia and the United States. American Rodney Combs started from pole position and led for the first 30 laps until engine problems forced an early retirement. Queenslander Charlie O'Brien took the lead, but back in the pack, a spectacular 5-car bingle brought out the yellow flag.
They're still hitting.
From the restart, Americans Jeff Fuller and Terry Fisher dominated proceedings. Then, 20 laps from the checkered flag, a slower car caused Fuller to spin.
Nice save, though.
Then, with only 3/4 of a lap remaining, Fisher, Kim Jane, Charlie O'Brien and George Elliott were all in with a chance. On the exit of turn 2, Elliott spun, taking O'Brien and Jane with him. Fisher the easy victor, with Jane and Elliott recovering for second and third. The Oscar action was equally as impressive, close racing and plenty of spills. Touring car ace Brad Jones in his Commodore won the race in front of Steve Harrington and Mark Seaton. Andy Raymond, 7 Nightly News.
That's a look at another busy day in sport. Betty has the weather next, and then a day for doubles at Kings Park.
Another lovely day outdoors. I hope you managed to get outside and enjoy it. The minimum today was 14.9 at 6:10 this morning. The maximum 23.2 just after 2 this afternoon. Right now in Perth it's 22.2 degrees. The humidity is 60% and the barometer reads 1,016.4 and rising. The weather map shows a weak front passing along the south coast, which has brought some drizzle to south coastal areas and cool to mild conditions to most of the southwest land division. The coastal waters, Jurien Bay to Mandurah. Winds becoming south-southeasterly at 12 to 18 knots offshore overnight, east to southeasterly at 8 to 12 knots inshore, then winds shifting south-southwesterly at 15 to 20 knots early tomorrow afternoon. Seas to 1 metre, the swell to 2 metres. So the forecast for Perth, a fine day tomorrow with light winds, a minimum of 14 and a maximum tomorrow 24 degrees. The outlook for Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be fine. And finally tonight, if you went to Kings Park today and thought you were seeing double, you were. It was the annual get-together of Perth twins, ranging in age from a few months to teenagers. In all, 92 families and 277 children, all members of the Twins Plus Club, turned out to prove that 2 is better than 1. There were also four sets of triplets and an even bigger handful, 1 set of quins.
I think that's 5.
More the merrier.
That's 7 Nightly News for this Sunday, the first day of December.
I'll be back with a news break at 8:30. Until then, good night.
Good night.